Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm chairing this workshop event, and hopefully everyone attending will gain information from the SmartChain project. And I will start by sharing my screen and hopefully finding my presentation. So you see my screen, and Matri Thakur, who is the first speaker, will give us an overview of the SmartChain project. So what I'm just doing now is to introduce the webinar and the things to do and how to progress in the work. We have a short agenda. We aim to have a few presentations, most of them 10 to 12 minutes long. And while we are presenting, the attendees can use the Q&A to ask questions in writing and add in issues. We will then decide whether we actually have pertinent questions that need to be answered right away after each presentation. But most likely we will try to collect all of them until the end of the presentations and start a roundtable discussion. And we should have an option for attendees if they want to ask a verbal question, and we should be able to allow you into the video as well, and we'll check whether that is working. So this is the agenda, and I will very quickly introduce our coordinator, Matri Thakur. She is a senior research scientist at the Department of Climate and Environment at Center Ocean in Norway. She holds a double PhD in agricultural engineering and industrial engineering, and her research focuses on food system analysis and development of traceability systems to improve information flows in food supply chains. She is the coordinator of SmartChain project that is funded through the Blue Bio Co-Fund. She has led several interdisciplinary projects focusing on improving sustainability, traceability, and resource efficiency in the seafood sector. And I will now stop my sharing and allow Matri to take over and give us a background to the SmartChain project. Matri, please go ahead then.
Yes, thank you, Stakeholder. Is my screen visible to everyone?
Yes, everything works as planned.
Okay, good. Yes, so like Stakeholder said, I'll give a brief introduction of the SmartChain project, which focuses on developing smart solutions for advancing supply systems in blue bioeconomy value chains. The project is funded by the Blue Bio Co-Fund, and then we have the national funding agencies in each country that have supported this project. It's a project that consists of 3 research organizations and 4 industry partners from 4 different countries. So Sintef Ocean is the coordinator, and then we also have Sea Garden from Norway. We have 3 partners from Iceland, including University of Iceland, Brim, and Markmar. We have the Technical University of Denmark, and BEA, that's a technical solution provider from Romania. Our overall budget is about 1.8 million euros, of which 1.28 is funded through this call. So what's the SmartChain project about? It's a project that's focusing on developing various innovative tools and solutions using different digitalization technologies and modeling techniques to improve traceability, quality, sustainability, and circularity in the blue bioeconomy supply chains. So these are the 4 keywords you'll hear again and again throughout the webinar today. Our case studies include fisheries and aquaculture value chains from Norway and Iceland. The overall approach is shown on this slide. So we cover the entire value chain from the production to the distribution phases in both fisheries and aquaculture value chains. And the overall objective is to enable supply chain decision-making that's based on a sustainability assessment framework, as well as the traceability system using blockchain. So what you see in the figure here, we started with mapping of the supply chain. And that basically informs the development of the sustainability assessment framework, which identifies various key indicators, including the environmental, economic, social, circularity, and governance indicators. And the project will also look at developing tools for scenario analysis, which, for instance, includes a multi-criteria decision analysis for evaluating the trade-off between these different criteria, as well as the input-output analysis to study the ripple effects in other parts of the supply chain, as well as the sectors connected to these industries. Our main use cases include modeling for instance, strategic planning, which is more long-term planning that looks at infrastructure requirements or investments needed to achieve these goals. We'll look at the operational planning models. That's short-term planning horizon, your day-to-day production planning, scheduling, as well as logistics optimization to then again improve sustainability, circularity, your quality aspects. And then we have a socio-economic aspect, looking at the ripple effects in the value chain. So job creation, for instance, and impacts on the other sectors that are connected to these value chains. The project is divided into 6 work packages. We have work package 1 focusing on the mapping of these supply chains that looks at understanding the critical points where losses occur or the quality is compromised. We also map the handling and cold chain management techniques and look at the resource use, which is followed by then supply chain optimization in work package 2. We're developing techniques for automated monitoring and sorting of bioresources. We're looking at optimal production planning and logistics, and also upscaling the technical solutions to convert the core streams into high value added ingredients. Then work package 3 focuses on developing a sustainability assessment framework through stakeholder engagement and selecting the suitable indicators. And this will inform the work done in other work packages as well, especially connected to work package 5. Work package 4 develops a traceability system based on blockchain technology. And the idea here is to improve the transparency in the supply chain, as well as enable timely intervention by the different supply chain actors. Our last technical work package is on system assessment and decision support. This work takes the inputs from the previous work packages and develops assessment tools for end-to-end effects, including your economic, environmental, and social impact. And we'll look at how to improve the supply systems from production distribution phases. Work packages 1, 2, and 4 are actually led by SINTEF. Work package 3 is led by University of Iceland, and work package 5 is led by the Technical University of Denmark. I'll just briefly touch upon the technique we have used for mapping of the supply chains, which is based on an extended functional modeling technique. So here it enables us to map both the material and information flows in one place. So you can in detail describe each function or a process in the food supply chain. So we can map all the different inputs and outputs. And these are not just your material inputs, but also the information that goes in and comes out of a process, as well as description of the information carrier. Then we have a control for each process or function, which could be a regulation or a resource constraints or just the business logic. And then what mechanisms support that function. For instance, the availability of technology and the knowledge and experience. This is hard to see, but this is basically how it looks like, how complicated it can become. So this is an example of the mapping of the salmon supply chain. So like I showed in the previous slide, we'll look at the different inputs, outputs, controls, and the support mechanisms basically for each step. And this just zooming in a little bit. So you can have your, the green arrows here are the information or information carriers, and the blue ones are material inputs. And then you can have outputs in terms of your waste, your emissions, etc. So I won't go into too much detail because this can take a lot of time to explain. Last slide, what are the expected main achievements of SmartChain? So I'm just reiterating what I've said already. So a framework for assessment of sustainability and circularity via stakeholder engagement. Then we have a traceability system that will be specified on how to make key data available. We'll have results in terms of models for production scheduling and logistics optimization. Automated quality monitoring and sorting using machine vision. And then in the final phase of the project, we'll develop innovative business models that are aimed at promoting a multi-dimensional sustainability and a simulation framework for sustainability assessment, as well as analysis of different production options and the trade-offs between your different key indicators. Thank you. That was a brief introduction of the project. But we'll hear more from other speakers as they go into detail on different topics. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Matri. We should, there are no pending questions in the Q&A. So we will just move to the second speaker, which is Magnus Staud-Myhre from SINTEF. Magnus has worked 5 years as a market analyst at Kontali Analyse before joining SINTEF Ocean in 2018. He has been mainly working with mapping studies in the seafood industry for waste materials or rest raw materials, food loss, and ripple effects involved. He is involved in the work package 1 on Blue Bio SmartChain project, looking at critical points and utilization of food loss and waste, as well as rest raw materials in Norway and Iceland. So Magnus, feel free to take over and share your screen with your presentation. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. I've still not figured out this camera and the Zoom, unfortunately, but I guess the sound is fine, which is the most important thing.
We hear you fine.
Like this. Is this fine? Yes. All right.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for the introduction, Sigrid. So as mentioned, I will talk about utilization in the seafood supply chains with Iceland and Norway in focus. So this presentation is built on the report from task 1.1 and 1.2 in the VP1 in the SmartChain project, where we have reviewed and mapped a lot of previous work, as well as national statistics to describe the two nations' whitefish and aquaculture value chains in terms of food loss and waste, as well as resource utilization of the rest raw materials originating from the processing of the seafood. So most of you are known of the global focus with the global population increasing. So we need to increase the availability, and it's critical to utilize a larger share of the volumes in a more sustainable way. So to give you an overview of how we define the different terms, I've included this value chain. So in the steps before the packaging and transport to the market seen on the left, the biological material intended for human consumption discarded is defined as food loss, while discards after these steps seen on the right is defined as food waste. So the difference is that one is able to utilize the food loss as rest raw material into various applications, while food waste needs to be handled as municipal solid waste. So rest raw material defined as the fraction of the seafood which is not commonly considered as food for humans, such as fish heads or viscera, and can as food loss be used depending on its condition into various applications, commonly biogas production or various feed applications. So while there are more data and knowledge on the utilization of rest raw material in both Norway and Iceland, there is some data now emerging for food loss and waste as well, which we have included in our report. So here we see a graph of the total food loss and waste for Norway in 2020, split on different sectors. And no surprise, we got the household consumption on top, accounting for almost 50% of the volume. Seafood processing industry, which can be seen at the upper left there at 12,400 tons. It's quite small in the big picture and accounted for about 1% of the produced seafood volume this year. And almost all of this in the seafood sector ends up being processed through silage into various feed ingredients. So while there are also seafood volumes in the household consumption, the data for now is quite vague, so it's not very easy to separate them out today. But we haven't found any data like this for Iceland. We have got feedback that the situation is quite similar in the Icelandic seafood processing industry in terms of share food loss, meaning the amounts are quite small also here. As said, there is not too much data on food loss and waste yet, but there is quite a lot on rest raw material from the seafood industry, which is also important to understand how we utilize valuable resources originating in the seafood value chain. So I will present some of the data SINTEF and Kontali Analyse in Norway have done since 2013, and afterwards look at Iceland as well. So to start, we can look at the production and the landings from the aquaculture and fishery respectively, taking Norway to quite a high ranking in the global standings. And as well, we are in Norway, we are a major exporter as well. However, this is 2021 numbers. We are exporting quite less prepared. So about 98% of mackerel and only 3 and 14% of cod and farmed salmon are fillets. And this leads to quite a big loss of potential rest raw materials, which could represent quite a high value creation for the domestic industry. From the start of the period, this is all sectors combined. We have gone from 72 to above 80% degree of utilization of the rest raw materials, mainly driven by the pelagic, which have about 100%, and aquaculture, which is about 90%, while the whitefish sector is somewhat different, quite much lower here, However, there's been a positive development for the whitefish through the period, which can be seen here. With 2012, we were at 35%, 2019 above 60%, and in 2021 we fell slightly down to 56%. So the development is mainly driven by the focus on full utilization, falling quotas as well, less material to work with, but also a development of the marine ingredient industry in Norway developing. So this is an overview of the main three main product categories we have. On the right, you can see 2012 versus 2021. So human consumption, where we want everything to go, but can't because of regulations, and consumer acceptance has gone from just sub 40,000 to now more than 63 or more than 60,000, with a share from 10 to now 13%. This is mainly direct products. By that I mean dried fish heads, which is not processed as much as hydrolysates and such protein powder. But we're seeing a shift in this in the recent time. Feed category have been the largest throughout the period. It is still a high demand in this category, especially for fish feed, but also pet feed, where they are paying quite high prices. For animal feed was large before, but it's forbidden to have farmed fur animals in Norway from 2025, and also some COVID outbreaks in big fur animal farms in Denmark in 2020. So this happening. The biogas is mainly category 2 material, which is basically self-dead fish by diseases from the aquaculture business. And this increase commonly follows the increase in the aquaculture production. The non-utilized restaurant material, of course, dominated by whitefish, where we have the lowest degree of utilization. However, we can see the positive trend also here, in addition to blood from aquaculture, which is still yet to be utilized. Moving over to Iceland, which is also a larger seafood nation, into recent time, mainly fisheries nation, but now growing rapidly also for the aquaculture. It's not seen super good here, but they have had a rapid increase the last years, and also quite high, and a vast majority being exported. However, the main difference is the last bullet point here, with a significant higher share of the 3 white fish species called haddock and saithe being exported quite high as fillets, which is not the case for Norway. For farmed salmon and mackerel, the picture is quite similar. So from what we could find in literature, for whitefish at least, the degree of utilization of restaurant materials in Iceland have been around 70 to 80% now in 2019, driven by obligations to land a certain share of the restaurant materials, and also quotas being owned by vertically integrated companies, which has stronger incentives for the fleet to land, and also a higher predictability for the land facilities for the production planning. And one can argue that this maybe puts the marine ingredient industry in Iceland in a better position to have more predictability of the available volumes. The challenges in Iceland, it's an older fishing fleet. However, they are renewing now more and more. But as it stands, the majority is not equipped to handle the large shares of restaurant material in addition to primary products based on storage and processing. Also, the profitability and labor cost is not viable at the moment. Also, the rapid growth, as said, for the farmed salmon. One can ask if the infrastructure is ready to handle both the main and the buy or the rest raw material. So as an overview, we have made like comparisons of Iceland and Norway, showing Iceland having it's obligatory to land certain fractions for the fleet, compared to Norway, where this is not the case. Iceland utilizes quite more than Norway, and also processes more, exports more as fillets compared to Norway, and are having a higher effort and have come further in the development maybe of clusters and efforts on high value products. Norway has quite a lot, but it's maybe lower value products at the moment into feed, for example. Aquaculture is quite novel in Iceland, but in Norway as well, compared to the fisheries, it's quite novel. However, the quantities in Iceland are still very low, so it's probably not a very high business case there for now. However, Norway has quite a lot, but also here it's like medium to low value products, slightly shifting towards higher value products in the recent time. We also looked somewhat on critical points for food loss and waste and rest raw materials in the literature. However, we couldn't really find solid data documented for Nordic countries and Nordic value chains in the seafood industry. However, from experience and feedback with the direct communication, we know that the storage capacity, given all the fleet regulations, leads to discards, as well as processing facilities has high investment costs, and they use a lot of the area in the vessels. And without this also leads to discards, in addition to inefficient cooling or storage management, and human or mechanical error. So a quick list of challenges for both Norway and Iceland. With the EU being main markets for both, there are high customs duty on prepared products. At least for Norway, this is the case for the absolute majority of products being less prepared, exported less prepared, and losing out on the rest raw material. There are also varying customs duty on processed marine protein products heading into similar production. For example, dry protein products like fish meal for now has a 0% customs duty, while liquid protein products achieves almost a 10% customs duty into the Netherlands. It is also quite a lot of time demanding and resource demanding processes to understand the markets and requirements both in the EU, but also in foreign outside the EU with health certificates and so on. And there's also a challenge with the MSC certification, for instance, in Norway, that were lost in the coastal basin in 2021, with markets demanding MSC certified volumes, both for primary products and rest raw materials to use it in production. However, we have some possibilities as well. In Norway, there have been now an initiative to look at more development of production lines for mackerel, which we are, as said earlier, exporting the majority less prepared. So production lines and processing of raw oil and production of taste neutral proteins from these production lines, developing products for human consumption or pet food. There's also been a project, this is completed, I think, but there are new projects as well now emerging, looking at blood from aquaculture, the last fraction here, as well as cod heads and cod backs, which commonly and conventionally have been exported dried, but is now looked at to produce protein powder with a high protein share and a low fat share into health supplement products. Yes. We could, of course, also mention the Iceland Ocean Cluster, which is doing a lot of goods in Iceland, as well as a lot of the new vessels in Iceland now installing more meal and oil processing facilities in their new vessels. All right, I'll stop.
Yes. Thanks, Magnus, for the good overview, and still no written questions into the, so we probably will move on to the next presentation, which is by Andrea Wigenstrand. She has been working for Sinter Ocean for a year now and has background in computer engineering and industrial ecology. She has been working on several projects at Sintef and possibly before with mapping information flows. So Andrea, the floor is yours if you would like to share your screen.
Thank you, Sigurdur. Can you see my screen in presenting mode now?
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect, thank you. I'll just take that small. Yeah, my name is Andrea. I work for Sintef Ocean, and I will present the work that we have been doing in the SmartChain project on mapping information flows. This have been given the title Current Data Capturing Practices in Seafood Supply Chains in Norway and Iceland, a basis for a blockchain-based traceability system. The aim of this work has been to map information flows in fisheries and aquaculture, both in Norway and Iceland. And with information flows, I refer to the data that is being captured in the supply chain, and what type of data and how often it is being captured and what level. I also refer to certain data gaps, what data is not being captured, as well as the types of software and information systems that are being used for data capturing. We are doing this because we are going to design the functional specification of a blockchain-based traceability system in the SmartChain project, which will happen at a later stage. And for those of you who are not really familiar with blockchain, it is the technology that is behind different cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, but has been more and more used in food traceability supply chain. And some of the reasons for that is that with blockchain, you can have full traceability of the supply chain so that every actor can access the information and see where the product is coming from and where it is going. As well, that this technology is immutable, and that means that once information is added to the blockchain, it cannot be changed or overwritten. So if you want to add new information, a new block has to be added to the chain. So that makes this a very safe system for storing information. Since we only have a brief presentation today, I have chosen to focus this presentation on the main case study, which are fisheries in Norway. But of course, there will be an open report from this work, which will also include the case studies on fisheries in Iceland and as well as aquaculture. The work is based off a review of existing literature and also interviews that has been done with a processing company in Norway, a company that does processing of coast streams, a software supplier, as well as some additional interviews that were conducted in another project, which is called Coolfish, where a fishing company and 2 fishermen sales organizations were interviewed. And those are presented in this report, which you can access at the link at this site if you're interested. So the supply chain of fisheries that has been defined and covered in this study is the catch operation until transport. In Norway, the most important species in the wild fisheries are whitefish and pelagic. In whitefish, we have species like cod, saithe, and haddock. And for pelagic, we have herring, mackerel, capelin, and sprat. In 2020, the catch of whitefish was around 650,000 tons, and for pelagic, 1.4 million tons. After the catch operation, the fish is landed and is either consumed domestically or exported. In 2020, 289,000 tons of whitefish was exported and around 500,000 tons of pelagic fish was exported. The fish is then processed either into fillet or other value-added products, and rest raw materials such as cutoffs, fish skin, etc., is further processed into marine collagen, fish oil, and meat for animal feed or biogas, as Magnus just presented. And then the packed fish products are transported either to retail or to other industries using these other fish products. During the supply chain, there is a lot of reporting and data capturing. So now I just plan to take you through the more official reporting and the types of data which are captured at each stage. In Norway, every vessel above 11 meters are required to have a vessel monitoring system on board. This is a system where they have to report their position every 10 minutes to the Directorate of Fisheries. They also need to have an ERS system, electronic recording and reporting systems, where they report on their activity. And there are three main messages that has to be reported to Directorate of Fisheries, which are DCA, Detailed Catch and Activity, DEP, Departure Report, and POR, Port Report. In DCA, they have to report on what catch they have caught, the weight of the total weight of the catch, which species, the geographical positions of the catch, the time of the catch, the day of the catch, what type of fishing gear they have used, as well if there were any bycatch. The departure reports, they have to report which port they are departing from. For the port report, they need to report at which port they will be landing their catch. And this is now currently for all the vessels above 11 meters, but in 2023 and 2024, this will also be extended to all vessels below 11 meters and below 10 meters. The fish is either sold directly or through auctions at landing, and all sales are organized by the Norwegian fishermen sales organizations, and it's illegal to trade fish without this organization. If there are direct sales, there's usually a quality control of the fish will determine the price, and a sales note is written, which includes details on the catch and the sold fish. If the fish is not directly sold, a landing note is written, which will also contain the same information as the sales note regarding the details of the catch, and the fish will then be put to storage on the harbor. If the fish is exported to the EU, a catch certificate needs to be written, and this catch certificate will also include information regarding the catch, what type of species, the weight of the species, as well as information regarding the fishing vessel, such as register mark and vessel name. And all of this is also has to be sent to the Fishermen Sales Organization and the Directorate of Fisheries, and will also be published at the Directorate of Fisheries and are part of Norway's official catch statistics. At the landing facilities, they need to write a journal on the arrival and departure of all the fish. And if they are processing the fish, they also need to specify which type of processing the fish products have been through. And this is also to the Directorate of Fisheries. And most the processing facilities, both for primary, secondary, and processing of co-streams, capture data on the batch ID, the dates of the processing, size, weight, quality grades, temperature, product type, weight, conservation method, product weight, and nutritional information. Then the products are packed and labeled, and here there are several requirements for labeling the food for human consumption. It needs to have information on nutritional information, the shelf life, species, catch area, fishing gear, catch date, the slaughter date, production date, the temperature, and identification mark. And when the fish is transported, the temperature needs to be logged, and the transporter needs to be able to document that the cold chain has not been broken for the products. There are some data that are currently not being captured or not being shared. Some information may be available for the company internally, but it's not being shared along the supply chain. And those types of data are mostly connected to environmental factors or impacts, such as fuel use, energy use, water use, waste, different types of waste, amounts and waste treatments, direct emissions and types and amounts of this, as well as transport routes and modes are currently not communicated. So conclude this work, the information often regarding the catch and quality and processing are often well documented, reported, and also captured electronically. And information that it has already has the system of being electronically captured can easily be connected to a blockchain-based traceability system, since the infrastructure for this is already at a good place. But some data may require new sensors to capture, such as fuel use and water use. But the software to capture and register this already exists. So the bottleneck here is really at the sensor stage. And to go beyond just reporting the traceability concerning where a product was, like where it was captured and where it was processed, but also being able to document the sustainability of product, it is necessary with those data on resource use and emissions to calculate and assess the sustainability of the seafood products. So that is my recommendation, is to increase those data capturing points as well. Thank you so much for your attention, and I hope you have found this presentation interesting.
Thank you, Andrea. And there are still no open questions, so we will move on. And the next presenter is Nina Maria Saviolidis at the University of Iceland, where Nina is a postdoc researcher at the Applied Supply Chain Systems Research Group. She has a master's degree in environmental and natural resources and a PhD in business from University of Iceland. So Nina, please take over and give your presentation.
Thank you. So I hope my screen looks fine.
Yeah, looks good. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So what I'm going to talk about is a little bit of what we've been doing most recently, because my group at the University of Iceland, we've been looking first of all at the indicators and the framework for indicators for measuring sustainability and circularity. And the second thing we're doing is we're taking interviews with companies to sort of find these barriers to increase sustainability and circularity in the blue bioeconomy. So this is what I'm going to be talking about today. Here we go. So I'll just go through a bit of some of the sort of basic concepts of what we mean by circularity and sustainability and bioeconomy and all that. And then I'll discuss a little bit about these interviews, who we have interviewed so far and what is coming next. And then I will report a little bit on our preliminary findings and show you a bit of a comparison with previous research that has looked at not the same, but similar topics. And then the conclusion and what we are doing currently and in the next few months. Okay, So basically what we are looking at is the circular bioeconomy, and the concept borrows from both bioeconomy and circular economy. So it's a combination of the two. And the circular economy, for those who have not heard of this concept before, it's a paradigm that sort of calls for the redesign of linear economic systems where you have environmental and social costs externalized to a circular system which is based on closed loop resource flows that can sort of preserve these embedded environmental and economic values in products over time. So it's a way to sort of increase resource efficiency by intentionally narrowing, slowing, closing material and energy flows. So it connects really much to whatever else has been discussed here already, but it's more sort of theoretical at this point. So the thing is that the circular economy is not complete without the bioeconomy and vice versa. So you have to have organic side and waste streams from agriculture, fishery, food and feed and so on, and forestry, and organic processed waste integrated into the circular economy through bioeconomic processes. You can't do it without these bioeconomic processes. And the bioeconomy, of course, can also profit from more circularity. When we talk about blue bioeconomy, then we're mostly just highlighting the aquatic and marine environments. And it involves also sort of a focus on novel applications, including non-food, food and feed applications. Another thing that is good to keep in mind is that the blue bioeconomy involves both primary and secondary activities, and other sectors may be connected to the blue bioeconomy through their services to these bioeconomic activities. And I say this because it relates to what stakeholders we decided to talk to. Here are some images. The main purpose of these is to just highlight that we're still a bit in the vague concept development, because not everybody has the same understanding of what exactly a circular bioeconomy should do and how it should relate to sustainability, which is a more sort of established concept in environmental science. So here is one image from a recent publication, which I will also show you later, on what the sort of principles of sustainability should be and how they should connect to the circular bioeconomy. And here they are: resource efficiency, optimizing value of biomass over time, and then sustainability. Whereas when you look at the Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO, they are focusing on the 4 pillars of sustainability and have a much broader scope of what a sustainable bioeconomy should be. So they connect those principles also to the Sustainable Development Goals, and it's much more overarching idea of what should be achieved basically with these strategies and goals that are set at the national level and then international level. So this is sort of the more theoretical introduction to what we've been looking at. But what we actually did was we took interviews with various stakeholders, and the point was to explore their perception, both of companies and experts and then policymakers in Iceland and in Norway, to see in which ways they contribute to circular economy, bioeconomy, sorry. And the main goal is basically to look at the opportunities and challenges for further advancement of circular blue bioeconomy activities and strategies in these 2 countries. So the plan is to interview 15 to 20 stakeholders, and these are in-depth, semi-structured interviews, and they have to be key informants, so people who really know what they're talking about. And we are thinking of secondary industries as stakeholders, primary industries, experts and research institutions, and public institutions and policymakers. And the main outcome of this study will be to have a comparative assessment of Iceland and Norway on these challenges and opportunities towards more circular blue bioeconomies. I cannot really tell you exactly who we talked to because we haven't had that many interviews. We have 8 interviews, 7 of which are in Iceland and 1 in Norway. But I can say that we have interviewed mostly secondary industries to start with, and experts and research institutions. So these are preliminary findings, and they are mostly, they are actually just from Iceland, because we're still taking interviews with Norwegian stakeholders. In this table, I sort of listed all the topics that emerged from the interview so far that I have analyzed. And also in the next slide, there's the similar sort of categorization. But we are focusing here on barriers and challenges rather than opportunities, just because that's the sort of overarching aim of this workshop. So I'd like to highlight a few of these. I'm not going to talk about everything. Access to and quality of raw material was an issue that was mentioned and has come up in previous research as well. And a few issues are related to this. It has to do with the increase in the price for raw material. We're talking about rest raw material also, but it can involve other types of material. And this can be a challenge, but it is also a sign of the increased value of raw material. And the amount of raw material that goes for feed production versus food, as Magnus also discussed, and other value-added activities was also a topic that was discussed. And this is an issue that needs to be considered in terms of the global goals and the food first principle. And besides that, it makes good business sense to move up on the value pyramid. So you go from feed to food to get more value. It was also clear from our interviews that many consider this to be a moral issue and to relate to our policy to prioritize food production over and our responsibility to poorer nations. So unsurprisingly also, raw material access was also related to some extent to supply chain issues to do with the pandemic and the war we're in now. So not a surprise. Another of the major issues that emerge is the need for mapping all waste streams, both in terms of quantities, but also in terms of the content and quality of those streams. So the homogenization of data is also an underlying issue here that is necessary for comparability purposes, especially to do with sustainability assessments. And another issue that was mentioned that is, at least in Iceland, a major issue right now was the lack of skilled employees and the larger issue of the need to invest in technical and STEM research education in Iceland, or STEM education, sorry, which is sort of scientific, more scientific focused, natural sciences focused research, education. And this brings me to the next slide, which is more related to the regulatory and policy issues that came up. Many issues emerged regarding institutional capacity in Iceland, both in terms of the needed infrastructure that is in some cases lacking. For example, in waste and waste management, in rural, especially in rural areas in Iceland, but also in terms of necessary knowledge and expertise that is sometimes lacking in our public institutions, as well as the fact that some people mentioned that people are just overworked in these institutions and that there is necessary funding lacking. The need for collaboration and partnerships along the value chain for various reasons, from securing raw material to lowering costs to becoming more competitive on the global market was mentioned very many times, but also the need for more company integration, so mergers and acquisitions, again, mostly for scaling up and being able to compete globally because Iceland is a small country. Here we go. So this is a very short overview of a recent publication, not by us, by a different researcher who looked at bioeconomies in general, not just the blue aquatic and marine environments, but in general. And these are the sort of main challenges they found through their interviewing. And you can see policies and regulations dominating. And Magnus also mentioned this in his presentation, that it is an issue. Traceability of materials throughout the value chain, which relates also to one of our project's goals. Inconsistent waste management practices in the EU, and lack of funding, which are all issues that came up in our interviews as well. But we have more different things to deal with, and it's going to be more localized to specific issues that are in these two countries. Okay, so all in all, I think a transition towards a more circular economy for the blue bioeconomy can contribute to resource efficiency gains. And those are integral both to sustainable development, but they also often just make good business sense, like turning waste streams or lower value products into value or higher value streams. It makes good sense. So advancing the circular blue bioeconomy can also contribute to internationally agreed upon goals, which is the Sustainable Development Goals, But there are trade-offs to consider, and assessments are necessary for more explicit evaluation of those trade-offs in sustainability. For example, with regards to rural development issues, and with fulfilling the food first principle, that is an international sort of goal. And apart from some research and development investments, development of the bioeconomy has mostly been left to the market, which can sometimes undermine these broader sustainability goals. But perhaps what is mostly needed is a very accurate accounting of waste and rest raw materials and other materials streams and energy streams too. But yeah, this is all I have to say for now. We still have to take more interviews, and we will be making a more complete analysis and a comparative assessment in a scientific publication, hopefully soon. So stay tuned, and please follow us on our social media for updates. I hope you gained something from this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. Excellent to have this overview. We have 2 more presentations, and I can advise that some questions are coming in, but we will hold them off until afterwards. So next speaker is Allan Larsen from Danish Technological University in Copenhagen. Allan, please take over, share screening, and give your presentation. And you need to introduce yourself, because I didn't have a proper bio for you.
No. Can you hear me?
Yeah, if you can make it full screen.
Yeah, I'm.
It's on the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah.
So do you see also the next one now? That's not the.
And now we see your notes. Can you change your screen?
Yeah. Interesting that it did that now, because it didn't do it earlier. So
yeah. You can switch, I think, in your PowerPoint.
There we go, I think. So this should be it. Right?
That's fine, thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Sigurður. So I'm Allan, and as Sigurður says, I will just give a very brief introduction to both myself and also to the institution that I come from. So there's a little picture there, and basically, as you can see here, that I'm a professor in operations management, and I work at a division called management science at the DTU management department. And basically, my background comes within operations research and within simulation modeling, and I've been working within transport and logistics for something like 25 years now, doing research on all different sorts of special transport and logistics problems. So working very much with the different sides of the transport sector, that goes with both the road transport, the maritime transport, a little bit also on the air transport some years back, and also a little bit on railways. So in recent years, I've become a little bit more interested in looking into the supply chain perspective. So not only looking into the logistics, in and outbound logistics, but actually also what goes across the whole supply chain. And what we're doing is that we perform research on optimizing supply chains in order to increase efficiencies and minimize the negative impacts that our transport has on, for instance, climate, but also on resource usage. So basically, try to actually minimize the footprint that we actually do on this globe. As said, I have a background in operations research, so this basically can be explained as optimization mathematics, so applied math. And then also very closely related to that is simulation methodologies, where we, in optimization, we try to actually go for finding the optimal solution, even in some cases actually mathematically optimal, so we can actually prove that it's optimal. In many applications, in real life applications, it might not be very important if we are actually looking for the optimal solution, but we just need a good solution, which is robust. And actually that brings me on to the simulation part of this, because in real life and in real world applications, we of course do see a lot of, you could say, disturbances, disruptions, fluctuations in demand and whatever. That means that there's a lot of stochasticity involved in the applications that we look in. So therefore, simulation gives us a very good tool, an engine for analyzing supply chains and logistics setups. So with respect to the SmartChain project, this actually links really well, as you probably can already guess here, the next bullet point with Andreas' presentation, because basically we have a very strong interest in being able to demonstrate what are the potentials of having more coherent digital value chains. So basically be able to, with basically a basis from operations research and also simulation, to piggyback on the new digital supply chains and value chains that we hopefully will have with, if Andreas' visions come true at some point, that we basically can ideally track everything and put it into a blockchain, something else. It doesn't really matter too much for us. We just basically need that type of technology, whether it's be a blockchain or something different that might come up in a few years, who knows. Right now, blockchain is probably the best bet in order to house the data, so we can actually enable what I call integrated planning. You could also call it holistic planning, where you, instead of just looking into very specific smaller parts of the supply chain, we try to become more integrated in the way that we see the world. So instead of optimizing only at a certain point in the supply chain, we actually try to broaden it out and include more data, more resources, more basically a larger picture of the supply chain. And that, of course, hopefully ends up being enabling us to do more holistically optimal, you could say, planning that will reduce waste. So often we have here at DTU, we say that the digitalization is, at least often, maybe not all the time in all applications, but often is actually a prerequisite for becoming sustainable. So in this case, we basically need to not only measure, but also actually visualize, track, make it transparent what kind of waste we have and where that is in the supply chain. So one thing is like looking into these dazzling numbers on how many tons and 100,000 tons and whatever we are landing, but where does it all go? I mean, and being able to do that requires, of course, a lot of technology underneath. So in SmartChain, we are basically in three parts of the project. The first one deals with production planning and scheduling. So developing some models there for better planning. And this will go into the processing facility sites. So take one filleting, for instance, production line in a facility, and being able to do even better than what the companies are doing today. That would be one example. Of course, it could also be at the whole facility level. So it's like several production lines, and it's like also looking into in and outbound logistics of that facility. Then the next one would be, which I will actually just also come back to in one of the next slides, because this is actually where we've started working mostly, is developing logistics optimization and simulation models at the company level. So looking at one specific company at a time, seeing from basically harvest, catchment at the sea or maybe in a farm, until we at some point leave it in the hands of the retail, basically the goods, to actually see what happens if we have a more solid and more coherent and more detailed value chain of what goes on. And then finally, we in the last work package we are involved in, we will be developing an end-to-end simulation model, which will try to assess potentials of the better planning with respect to especially reducing waste, which is sort of like what we are trying to do in this project. And there we will be looking at the sectorial level based on a number of companies or markets, or at least a few, to try to mimic also across companies. So it's not just one single company, but maybe a market, a geographical region, or a certain type of fish that we are looking into. So this is basically what we are involved in with SmartChain in the SmartChain project. The first one here already talked about a little bit. So production scheduling. So that will be at the production site level, and again trying to make the best possible use of raw materials. There's a notion here, so like an assumption saying that if we actually get more detailed information on the catchment even before it reaches the production site, then we will be able to control the machines and sort the fish so that we actually get an increased use of the raw fish, and therefore and maybe also can better plan the co-streams from that. And there, of course, we need to consider seasonal supply of the raw fish, and also that the demand for the products are also taken into consideration. That might be different or varying prices in the market. So we need to decide on a specific case study here, and which will probably require quite detailed data from catchment until final processing steps in order to continue on this track. The next one here deals with logistics optimization, and here we are looking into developing a simulation model which will be able to perform what-if analysis for specific scenarios of the demand and supply. So could be variations due to seasonality, but also maybe different type of markets that are requiring different products at a certain time. And we would like to see if we could showcase that we can optimize this in the outbound logistics, so that it becomes more smooth, whatever you would say. So so this is a thing that we would a topic we would look at in a thesis project that we were just starting just actually these days right now. And to finally go into a little bit more, a little bit more visual way of representing this, maybe. So one of the things that we could look into is like a high-level description would be, what is the potential of having more and maybe also earlier information on what's actually being caught at sea, or what you are actually putting up from or getting up from the farms. So in the seaside, in the fishery at the sea catchment area example here, we assume that some of our friends here in the project are looking into assessing the quality and quantities more fine-grained already at the catchment area. So whenever the fish is landing on the ship, if that information could actually travel to the processing facility before it arrives, then in the first case here, you can see there are two cases. We would basically be able to maybe plan in a little bit different way according to the orders that we already have gotten from our customers. So the orders that has been placed based on a forecast that already has been given from the company. And that forecast can, of course, become better if we know more about what kind of specific fish that we are landing, what kind of qualities and so on. So actually a pretty early stage, we will be able to send more you could say, elaborate data onto the customers in the fish market. So I get the wholesalers or whatever who are buying in this market. And the next one here, the last part here would be that that here you could even consider that this information actually travels directly to the market in some kind of handled way, of course, from the production facility or for the company that are processing the fish. So the market will have this information, so not just only a forecast, but a much more detailed forecast, and that could be somehow fluctuating or mean that it would somehow become an important decision factor for the market in order to actually place their orders. So so that could be used again in order to plan better at the production level, production side, if you know a little bit of what are the market demands, what kind of different types of primal streams and also the co-streams that you need to produce. So yeah, this is some of the thoughts that we've been doing until now. Yeah, and whoopsie, this is the last slide. Thanks.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks for this good overview on your work in the project, and interesting on the tools that you're developing in terms of logistics. If I stop your presentation, and we have some issue with I'm not sure what it was. Somebody wanting to. Okay. Yeah. Okay, I think it has been clarified. We have, but we will also in the discussion session be able to open for all the participants on video and have a kind of roundtable discussion. We are not that many, so the last speaker is from Sea Garden, Espen Hastøy Sunde, and he will give a short overview as well of his background. He's the Chief Financial Officer, I think, of the company. So Espen, please go ahead and share your screen.
Thank you for the introduction, Sigurd. You see my screen now?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, so I'm the industrial partner in this project together with my R&D manager, who could not be here today, unfortunately. So we will talk about Sea Garden just shortly to give you a brief introduction to our company. And I will talk about the sourcing situation today. And my name is Espen Sunde. I'm the CFO of Sea Garden Group. I've been CFO since 2021, and I have 5-year prior experience from both advisory and audit. So I'm not typical bioeconomist, but I've been in the industry enough to understand that this is a really important project, and looking forward to discuss this further. Just short about our history. We are beginning to be an old company. We started in 2001 and was established as a fish extract company. So we've been doing this for human consumption since our beginning. We started a new line in 2010, mostly based on marine powders at Avaldsnes at the west coast of Norway. And in 2017, we installed a new production line, which was installed for collagen production. So this year, we are increasing our production line with over double capacity. So today, we are actually the leading producer of 100% natural and high quality marine ingredients for the human consumption. So just how our company business model operates. Of course, sustainability is and have always been the core of Stigan's business, where we buy products that we consider others would consider as waste, and we try to make this value-added products for human consumption. So our production today is mainly based on whitefish, and also now we have started with salmon and also shrimp byproducts. And this is mostly bought from MSC and ASC certified fisheries. But we have also made the products to human consumption based on sea urchins, roe, both hard and soft, and algae and other marine products. And we have highly attractive end products, which is used in both health and nutrition, cosmetics, food supplements, and flavor and in the fragrance industry. So you can see some of our customers to the right there. Nestle is one of our oldest and biggest customers. Unilever, TCI is an Asian customer, and also Gino Bio, Simrisa. So we export 90% of our products to outside Norway, and we also have all our certificates, MSC, ASC, HAL, ISO, that we understand is really important in this industry to have a competitive advantage. So I stole this value chain just that you can have a understanding of where Stigan sees ourselves. So we are in the secondary processing. We buy this residual side streams from the catch harvest companies, which sends this to processing, and we have to buy this from marketplaces to get access to this residual side streams. And we also do the storage and packaging and distribute this to retailers. So we are kind of in the between of this rest raw materials, and also that we have to consider the food waste and the other side of the retail and consumption, and how long the product holds and everything. Yeah, so as I said, we are a leading marine collagen producer. We have state-of-the-art facilities. We have a massive customer demand, but because of the sourcing situation, we cannot meet our customer demand, which we have considered 5 times higher that we can actually produce. So this is a really good indication that if we had more access to raw material, especially in the Nordic, we could have a bigger potential for both ourselves, but also other market potential if we had more access to raw material. So then I will talk about the sourcing situation. We have most of our raw materials delivered from high quality parties, Lerøy, Bakkafrost, Insula, and Nergård. And we also have cooperations with Mowi and some of the other larger catching companies. This year, we estimate to buy around 8,000 tons of fish skin. As I said, we also buy other types of side streams, cod heads, and well, sometimes we have to buy other things just to get access to the fish skin that we would like to buy. And but now I'm mostly talking about the fish skin. So if you can say that approximately 2,400 tons, or 30% of all of fish skin, is sourced from Norway, and the rest, 70%, is sourced outside Norway, even though a lot of this is fish that has been catched within the Nordic Ocean. So it's sent out of Norway to process it in mostly Poland, Lithuania, and some of the other eastern countries at the most. And then it's processed and made fillets, and then it's sent back to freezeries, different places. So we have to buy this from agents or other marketplaces. That is not easy to get access, and it's really fragmented market, and the traceability is often lost because the blocks is just put together by many different freezeries or fillet fabrics, and that they put everything together. So that's making this quite hard to be tracking and all our catch certificates we have to add manually to our ERP system because of MSC certificate that we have. We have to trace all this manually. So a lot of the solutions that is presented today is really necessary to us to make our sourcing situation a lot better. So yeah, it's also we have not done it yet, but we have started to look for Asia, which is also Nordic fish that is sent to Asia to handle, and then we have to buy the fish back from Asia just to have access to enough raw material to our production today. So it's a fragmented marketplace, lots of uncertainty with the forecasting. The prices is really fluctual, seasonal dependencies. That is not easy for us to make forecasts because of the fragmented marketplace. And also we see that it's a big difference in quality, that many of these countries don't consider a side stream as value. They just maybe when they make the fillets, they just throw it away and we cannot use it when it arrives to our fabric. And also a new increasing problem is with an electricity rising, the freezing costs becomes much higher. So this is leading to both higher raw material costs because of the freezing process, and also that we see that the freezing process is now not as good as it was just 1 or 2 years ago because they neglect the importance of a good freezing process. Now many times when the raw material comes to our port, we see that the blocks have not been treated as it should be. So this leads to much higher food waste because of this higher freezing costs. So this is also really important that we have both a short-term solution to and also a longer-term solution. And also we see that the packaging of the freeze is really various. We have compared to Iceland, for instance, we see that the Icelandic raw material that we receive is often not good, but often from Poland, it's actually, they understand that this has some high values. They use much better packaging from Poland than we see from Iceland. So this is, I think this is cultural differences on how to consider this side stream and understand that this, at least fish skin, has now a lot of value that maybe wasn't considered as value before. Now we have, this is the first year that we have started with salmon skin, and because this is a different production for us because of the brown meat that is often not being removed, and this is rarely done in Norway. So this is also a really challenging part with considering the salmon skin, that it has a lot of more oily, and often the brown skin is more harder to handle. So this is less suitable to produce collagen because of this type of skin often comes more with wounds as well. So this is something that we have done a lot of research for the last 2 years, but now we have found some producers and also salmon farmers that is considered as good to produce collagen. But we can also use salmon skin that are wounded or has other deficiencies, but then we have to use it in other processes, not as high value as it could be if we could use it to produce, for instance, collagen or the other hydrolyzed proteins. And the last thing I will say that it's a huge challenge is what I also mentioned, that a lot of these processing sites do not have the right freezing options and do not have the technology to do the packaging correctly. So that leads to a lot of unnecessary food waste and loss. And if we had more governance in this site, and also maybe could have some training on the different sites to handle the side stream, I think it could just there handle a lot of this raw material situation and upcycle much more than we are doing today. So just some sea garden and industry wishes from the future. I think we need more access to sustainable raw materials, and just for our sake, next year we could produce marine collagen from 30,000 tons of skin, and that is today I said we are buying 8,000 tons. So this is not available products on the market for us to produce today, but it is there, but it's not handled the right way. Salmon skin, of course, it's easier because it's much more accessible and stable access. The forecast is often better. So we hope that also cod farming could help us ensure access to skins from whitefish on a more stable market. And also we would like to see better marketplaces, for instance, with the use of blockchain technology, where we can have more collaboration that could also benefit the catching companies and also the processing companies, where everyone can have more value to the handling process and also get more value of the whole fish. And this will also maybe lead to better prices, higher quality, and also, as I mentioned, the treatment of this raw material. So we would like to see more incentives for both Norwegian and other Nordic countries for the fisheries to process the whole fish, the whole value chain in Norway, not sending it to the whole of Europe and now Asia to do the gutting and freezing and treatment. This is not the way of going ahead. So we should get more focused on keeping the fish where it's closest to the pool, to say it. And as you see, Sea Garden is located really nice at the west coast of Norway. So we have the technology and the capacity to handle a lot of these side streams. So now we just need other partners and collaborations to make that happen. Thank you for listening. So we can do the questions together with everything else. And not be afraid to send me an email if you have some partnerships ideas or other good ideas for our raw material. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Espen. Good presentation. Now we have finished all the scheduled presentations, and just to take a little bit of break, we have a short poll that people can answer to, and maybe take a couple of minutes break to get water or coffee. But then we will start discussions, and while we are running the poll, and please write your questions, or if you want to join the panel, raise your hand, and we will try to promote you into the kind of discussion on video. So don't be shy. We welcome fruitful discussions for 10, 15, 20 minutes, depending on how active we get. So I'm launching now this poll. Please take a short while just to tick your preference, and then we will continue the discussion. So the poll should be open now. I'm not sure if the poll is, the poll is open for the attendees. We have only 5 votes out of 13 possible at the moment. So don't be shy. Make up your mind. What is the key challenge for enabling circular blue bioeconomy? I'm not sure if this is going to be a statistically valid poll, but we will give it a few seconds more. Don't hesitate. It's multiple choice, so it's easy to just tick your preference, and then we will go to discussions, and we have one specific question written in, and then if people want to have a say, they can actually ask to join the meeting and have a chat. So I don't see any activity on the poll any longer. We can leave it for a while in the background. And if everybody in the panel has gotten a cup of coffee or water, then we will be starting very soon on discussions. And unless people object, we can actually take everyone into the panel, and we only have now active in the meeting 13 guests. So the question is, as it's a fairly small meeting, we could do that. But before that, we have one specific question from Christina Vidal, which is addressing you, Andrea. And if you don't, you can open the Q&A to see it, but if I read it up aloud, regarding the data currently not captured, shared, who do you think is responsible for making this data accessible? Is it the end users, the equipment vendors, scientists, others? So, Andrea, if you see the question, would you like to comment on it? If you unmute yourself and reply.
Thank you. You can hear me right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I think that it is not only one party who should be responsible for making this data accessible. Of course, the companies are the owners of this data, and they are the ones who are the only one who can actually make it accessible, but they need the proper systems in place, and therefore software suppliers are responsible for making systems that can take in this type of data and can also communicate this further. But to ensure that the right data is being captured, I think that is up to scientists and also regulators to ensure that, especially if you want to communicate sustainability indicators, which data is needed to calculate those, which data is not relevant, and also having regulations at play so that companies know exactly what is expected of them. Of course, now today you have, when it comes to reporting carbon footprint, for example, that is mostly driven by either customer demand or demand from end consumers. And often those consumers or those customers are willing to pay more for those products, for those companies doing the extra step to document the sustainability of that product. But if we wish that all companies are documenting this, I think there will be some need of some standardization and some regulations as well, and some clear guidelines on exactly what to be shared and who to share it with, because not all information needs to be shared with all the users. For consumers, for example, I think that and also the rest of the value chain, knowing how your product has come from the ocean to your plate is quite interesting. Many more consumers and also clients would probably rather buy a product that was fished in Norway and processed in Norway and not fished in Norway, processed in China and then transported back, if they had the option and they could take that choice. But having a wide range of sustainability indicators can also become confusing, and maybe it's more relevant internally So I think that this is really a joint effort to make this data accessible. I see that you would like to have a comment on this as well, Sigurd.
No, I was just marking the question that you would
Oh.
answer it live, because I realized that it was open as a written response, but I made it with your voice. So it is basically, we can mark it as a done question. Anyone wanting to comment on this in the panel, or anyone in the audience that would like to join in the discussion? Nina?
I was not the first to raise my hand.
Ah.
What I think is also would be really fantastic is, instead of having what we currently have with these large companies that report on a lot of data actually in these sustainability reports, what we really need is a common database where everything goes in digitally and you can easily access it and download it, and everybody reports on the same units. Because like you said, Andrea, we need standardization, because right now we can't compare even companies within the same sector sometimes.
Okay, thanks, Nina. I think that's correct. I noticed now that Matri, you had raised your hand, so please go ahead.
Yes, just a quick comment in addition to everything Andrea and Nina just said. I think the willingness to collaborate in a supply chain and a willingness to actually share this data, that's also very important, because we see for everything that's not regulated to be captured or shared, then it's really up to how these companies collaborate and are they willing to share this data. So that should be remembered as well.
Yeah, if I could throw in a comment, because the viability of any system analysis and sustainability depends on basically having transparency, and traceability is one part. And people are always claiming that they need to keep data private because of competitive issues. If we are competing to have a survivable world, basically we need to be more transparent in general, and standardization of the data is key to that. And I think it's just very often that the industries are saying that they can't share the data because of competitive issues. I don't think they just are concerned enough that transparency is the biggest business opportunity they may have, because transparency builds trust and confidence, and as soon as you don't want to share any information, you basically are in doubt. At least that's, I'm speaking as a consumer now, not a supply chain expert, but as soon as somebody doesn't want to tell me something, oh, there is something fishy there. Is there something rotten that needs to be hidden? Anyway, so the business opportunity, the business model for circular economy for me is full transparency as much as possible, because then the ones with the best systems will survive, and the lagouts that really are not with their act together just die and get out of business and leave space for the good ones. Anyway, that's a private opinion. So I will stop talking and I will end the poll, and others can participate.
Alan has his hand.
Yeah, okay, Alan.
No, I did it in the right way. I mean, in this project, I guess we want things to be fishy, but maybe not rotten, as you say. So that was not the comment. So I think in this world of logistics and transport, I completely agree on what you say, and what also I'm doing actually relies on very, very high resolution, even in some cases real-time data access. So so I'm very, very interested in that we have this, and I also agree on the other points that you say. But on the other hand, we also do see that it's whenever we start talking, for instance, about blockchain, and I speak very much to the transport operators, many of them in that business certainly do not trust technology that is that advanced that they don't understand what's going on. So that's an issue, even though it's actually built to be enabling transparency and so that reduce fraud or whatever. Then it actually also might have a lot of barriers in order to be included into larger scale production. We do see that in logistics that some companies have been successful in actually building. I think IBM and Maersk with their trade lens is probably one of the most successful and largest potentials there. And still, it seems that it still has some time to go. It seems to be ripe enough to be really, well thought of in the industry, so that that people start believing in it. I think it would be interesting to hear maybe from Espen, from Seagarden, how you see this, because you might be one of the companies that, even though that you are, I guess, a younger company, which is also maybe therefore more tech savvy than other companies could be, especially maybe a road transport company with like 40 trucks. They usually are not very tech savvy, to be honest, and not maybe very innovative seen with the tech angle to it. They are very good in running business. But how do you see, do you believe in that this is going to be happening soon across the supply chain that you're in?
Yeah, it's a really important question to ask, because as I said, I'm coming from more the tech consultancy part of things. So I've seen this. I've been working on the other side, but now I'm in a company which is in the middle of the value chain, handling the catching companies that are actually able to catch all this data, but don't have the necessary systems and maybe the governmental incentives to do this in the right way. Because as we all have said during this interviews, there are a lot of data here, and also suitable data that is possible in a blockchain to make this happen. But then you see how this value chain just develops, and then you have the processing companies in the different parts of Europe that don't have any technology to handle this kind of data. They have catch certificates that they write for hand that we receive on email, and then it's the transport companies that you are also mentioning that don't have, which is also really difficult, because we, for instance, at the west coast of Norway, use maybe 5 different transport companies, both by plane, shipping, and also trucks. All small players and big players like KTM, and so that is really hard business, and they don't seem to have the same focus as we that are in like sustainable business mindset. We have been doing these programs and are trying to talk a lot with catching companies to make this happen. But on the other side of the value chain, there are no talks about how to make this more sustainable. They don't have any incentives, but keeping the freight costs extremely high at this point, and I don't think we had one discussion with some of their partners to talk about, okay, how can we make your logistics system talk to our system? Because then it's almost an interest conflict right away, because they think we are trying to fool them, or they don't trust this kind of systems. So it's tougher than I would imagine when I came into this business just 1 year ago to have this talk. So for me, I think it's really critical success factor is that there has to be some governmental incentives, maybe requirements, because we do a lot of reports now to the Norwegian government on how much residual price streams are we taking in, how do we transport it, and also CO2 emissions and everything. But we don't have any like this value analysis comparison. We just talk for ourselves. They have to be more they have to see the whole business as a whole and how to make this happen, and have requirements on a value chain and not only the business as isolated industry. So I think it has to be something on governmental level that talks to the business as a whole. Have a requirement that maybe over 90% of the catched fish has to be handled in Norway, not can be sent out, because already there is a lot of emissions that is fragmented, and you lose a lot of important data that could be important in this matter.
Yeah. If I may, I raised my hand just to follow up on the issue because of the difference. Like Norway, you said that a big part of the fish is being exported for filleting in Denmark or Netherlands or wherever, and then you need to get the skins back from Poland as one case. So the question is basically when people go and getting the license to operate in the food system, and if they only are looking at one main product from any raw material and not responsible for the rest material or others, then they put all the cost and value on the main, for example, fillets. And is it responsible then to use the resource, natural resource, and waste the rest? And in my opinion, again, being opinionated, there is no right to have license to fish and waste, because you need to consider all of the streams. And this brings on governance and issues. And taking an example, I was in the fish business many years ago, and when Marks & Spencer came to Iceland to buy, they made criteria. They made governance restrictions. If you did that, you did that, you did that, we buy your product. They were not at that time talking so much about environmental issues, except maybe sustainability in terms of catching. But things are changing. Now packaging, everything has to be kind of considered. And now you mention, because of the war in Ukraine, that the electricity is going up and people don't care of freezing. So then my question becomes, which is a big scale issue for the food system as such, why should you be operating in a food system if you're not able to really deal with all the issues, all the raw material? So how can you make people responsible when the politicians are probably the least responsible in the long term, because they don't want to change regulations? So I'm ending here for the time being. How can we get people to be responsible? And I'm talking about everyone in the value chain. Nobody wants to answer this. Maybe I'm going too big. I see no takers. So then we need to discuss something else more logical in terms of transparency and traceability. How to get the picture. Yeah, Guðrún, you have
maybe just one point, because we were involved in studies before on transition of the food system and resistance to change, and it appears that if the industry is doing well for themselves, they tend to maintain the same situation. They bring in some innovations if there is value in it for them. And so there is always this resistance to change from the actors who are profitable, and that is kind of a limitation or a barrier for change. And I mean, I really like your comments on that. They should be responsible for all their raw material. And just as an example, for the Marine Stewardship Council standard, the certification is based on the main product. I mean, they only have to show traceability in terms of the main product. They have already some kind of input-output analysis of all raw material, but based on my experience here in Iceland, there is hardly any company who is filling in those information, except for maybe 2 or 3 who are very into value-added products. So it's this resistance to change. If the system is working, why should we change?
Yeah, it is a question of responsibility. I think that's the issue, because then the slackers cannot stay in business because they are slackers, and the excellent people actually don't get the advantage of being excellent. So Alan.
Yeah, thanks. I think I just basically just wanted to agree with Espen. I think also we probably need regulation in order to control this. I mean, if you look into other industries than the fisheries and maybe also food in general, there are some industries where they are a little bit more progressive with respect to what the company requires from the upstream, so like sourcing, I mean, their raw materials in. But that comes, I mean, for instance, I know that from the pharmaceutical companies, and they have a much larger profit or revenue margin, you could say, profit margin, sorry, than many other companies, especially, I guess, in food and fisheries. So that might be because they also, I mean, are a little bit different put together with respect to how they develop their business. Because they have maybe a little bit more technological background, and they might need to know that they are, or might be a little bit further advanced in not being so afraid of the innovation part of it. And then they see that some of their, both customers are actually requiring that they are able to certify to a larger detail than what we expect from like the ordinary buyer at a supermarket. They might want to see that it's MSC certified or whatever it's called, but in like the more detail, it's hidden. So I think I don't know, maybe green labeling is and these initiatives, if they become, and it needs to be international, at least at the EU level, and I mean probably would not be able to do something even more super national than the EU, at least not in one go, I guess. But it needs to be cross borders, otherwise it wouldn't work. So I think I agree with Espen saying that it will not come just because some green NGOs say that we only want to buy from this type of supplier or company, because it simply needs more push than that. I think I'm pretty sure that's the case. So I think maybe what we can do, seen from my side, then is that, at least from my research group here, is that we can maybe exemplify out from, let's say that we do have the data, for instance, from Andreas blockchain, and then see actually what is the potential of this by showing it that we can actually reduce waste, and that could then persuade the politicians to be a little bit more far-sighted or have a longer view than what the Sigurður says, which of course is true. But on the other hand, they also need to start initiatives. So if it's something that looks as if it's really like visionary, so then sometimes politicians actually do take initiative to do something a little bit more, and especially on the super national, what is that, or over national period. I think that could be done. So I think maybe in one of the goals, objectives of this project could be to showcase the importance of, we have much more value in having transparent digital information and so on in our supply chain, so we can measure. So that goes in across the Icelandic team here on assessments and indicators and so on, and then on optimizing it. So I think in doing it and showing the potential might be a little bit tricky, because we do need some data to support this. But I think it's a good story. It's sellable. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, if I may add, I think European-wide or EU-wide, even though Norway and Iceland are not part of the EU, in food trade, food system changes, actually, they need to really regulate in a transparent way and across borders. And one example is the story of the carrots. I was watching a TV show from Sweden, where a farmer actually was throwing away several tons of carrots every day when he was harvesting, because they have crooked or didn't look correct by the market standard, perfect carrots. So why was he wasting? And this was actually then either put into landfill or possibly to animal feed, but mostly to landfill. So to make it external to the food system responsibility, now I'm talking carrots, the same as in the fish. So why should it be allowed to harvest food to waste it? And one of the culprits is the Common Agricultural Policy, because pharmaceutical, you mentioned that, they actually have the business, and governments pay mostly for all the medicines in the world, and the CAP pays for all the waste in the farming in Europe, 126 billion euros. And why is it done in such a way? By the end of the day, it's the taxpayers that are paying for the waste, either fish, agriculture, or any system. Medicine as well, because do we need all of these pills? That's another story. I'm ending on this story is that somehow we have to make the system responsible, and that is governance and systems. Otherwise, we will not change anything. We just keep on wasting. 30% of the waste goes on and on. So I'm trying to be always the optimist in terms that we can change the system, but it takes time. It takes time. Any other final words? Maybe Matri, as a coordinator, any wise words? Because I'm maybe getting too far away from the actual doables.
No, but it's nice to have these kinds of discussions as well. So I agree with all the points that have been made, and especially the last point from Alan, that maybe if we can showcase how what we are developing in terms of different tools and technologies that they can address this problem of circularity, sustainability, food waste, that could be a story to tell and could be taken into consideration by the regulatory bodies and politicians. Because I've been working with traceability systems for several years now. So I don't see a big challenge when it comes to technology, but it's more the willingness of the companies, or not having enough push from the governments, or not enough demand on the consumer side to know this information. So then that's where our main challenge lies. But I hope we can address some of these issues in the project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Matri. I think this is hopefully not this final workshop. We're just in the first year, end of the first year in the project, and more outcomes to come, and more progress, and hopefully involving more of our stakeholders in the work, like Nina was reporting on, and interesting research that could add a small grain on the balance of scales for how to change the food system. And we have opportunities. I think the challenges are really opportunities. So we are now at the end of time. So I will open the floor for last comments from anyone. Otherwise, we will close the event and advise all that were registered. We will share a recording of this event as soon as possible to those that were registered, and possibly most likely put it also on YouTube, so it can be accessible for others as well in the future.